Hi everybody, happy Wednesday, June 10th. Today is National Iced Tea Day, so I have all of my things here to make a little iced tea, help cool down on this warm day. Today I am doing our Constitution Study Group. I will be going over all of the amendments that haven't finished yet, haven't completed, and then we'll be done completely with reading the entire Constitution. So within the period of a month, we've been able to once a week gather and make it through. Before I get started with that, I do something a little more interesting and make my iced tea to enjoy while we do all of that. In addition to making the iced tea, I wanted to talk a little bit about iced tea itself, a little bit about the history of iced tea. There's, just like with all of tea, there's so much like folklore and legend and storytelling around iced tea. Whenever I first heard the story of the history of iced tea, probably is the main story that most people here. So when I'm brewing the tea hot, and then I'm gonna ice it using these 2 cups here. I'm hot brewing it in the Gaiwan and using a pretty significant amount of tea. This is Ruby 18 black tea. It was left over from my event yesterday, so I thought I'd use it. Ruby 18 makes a really great iced tea. In addition to iced tea, it also makes a really good cold brew tea. We've even tried cold brewing it in soda water, and that is very, very good. So yeah, I'm gonna brew it pretty concentrated, brew it strong, so that way when I ice it down, it won't get too diluted with the melted ice that will turn into water. Yes, Bitcoin? Bitcoin, say hi to everybody. There's some action next door, so that's what he was barking at. So yeah, I'll brew this a little bit longer than I usually would, doing like the typical Gung Fu hot brewing tea service that I usually do here. But yes, to the Hamal Tea, good to see you. Happy Wednesday, peace. Happy iced tea day. Hope you get to enjoy a nice, refreshing glass of iced tea. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to stack 2 steeps, 2 infusions from here and here before I transfer it into this cup to start icing it down. So this should be good for my first infusion. So yeah, the story I had heard of the invention of iced tea and the start of iced tea was at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis. I know that there's a lot of stories that happened at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, but in regards to today's holiday, it is claimed that someone by the name of Richard Blechden was the one, that invented, and that story was that it was a very hot day and he was trying to sell his hot tea, and people weren't interested in his hot tea, so he started pouring it over ice to make it more refreshing, and that's how he made iced tea. But in fact, there are several other printed recipes of iced tea from far before this occurrence. The first printed recipe is from the 1870s. And there was 2 recipes in the cookbook, the Buckeye Cookbook by Estelle Woods Wilcox. And then also in another book called Housekeeping in Old Virginia by Marion Cabell Tyree in 1877. So, several decades before the World's Fair, there was already use of iced tea. And there is accounts of people seeing iced tea in the United States in the 1860s. So there's a little bit of a different stories about who invented iced tea. But from what I can find online, it seems that it is a very American thing. And so it's appropriate that it's a national holiday here in America on June 10th. I believe this whole month is usually celebrated as iced tea month. So, yeah, in a place like Las Vegas, iced tea is very good. But, not to say that hot tea is not also good even in warm temperatures. It's been stated time and time again that, oh, Bitcoin's interested in the ice. You don't like ice, boy. You just think it's treats. I know, you think it's treats. It's not. It's just ice. So yeah, it's a very American thing. It has now become a very international thing, but kind of and for the longest time, iced tea was our only culture. And for some folks in this country, it is the only tea culture in this country, especially in the South, where iced tea is brewed strong and also brewed with lots and lots of sugar. And so there are many places in this country that when you go to a restaurant and order tea, you are going to get a very, very sweet glass of cold iced tea. So iced tea, it's served everywhere. It is very popular in the South. In the South, maybe it's assumed that there will be sugar in it, but in other parts of the country, you can definitely get it unsweetened. So I'm going to put some ice in my cup. I'm going to make, kind of a makeshift cocktail shaker with these two glasses. And then have this remaining ice for my glass. So it can be a beautiful, refreshing looking cup of iced tea. Usually whenever I have cold tea, it's cold brew. I don't usually do this, but I didn't prepare any of my the cold brew for today's session, or at least bring it here to the office. Oops, put a little too much in here. Let's get it before I waste too much of this beautiful. Oh yeah. This one's gonna fit. Maybe I'm not gonna be able to shake it, but I'll definitely be able to. So in this process, it's definitely diluting. You can see that most of that ice is already melted. And that's fine, because I brewed the tea very strong. Oh, that beautiful color. So it's now cold, just like that. It became cold tea from being very hot. And now I have the remaining ice. Oh, and I have some leftover. Perfect. I guess I'll save this for another cup. And there we go. Our beautiful cup of iced tea. Alright, let me put my ice away and then I will get reading the Constitution. This has been a really fun experience for me, and I think today is going to be the last day of having to read the document itself. So if I do continue this, and I'll kind of field interest from everybody that has been watching, if cheers, happy National Iced Tea Day. I made a cup of iced tea in less than 5 minutes. You saw it right here. How easy that was. Ah, that's so good. So good. Oh yeah, so I'm going to field interest and see how people are enjoying the topics and the conversations that are happening. Perhaps maybe not have to read so much of the document anymore, but a bit more of the processing of some of the ideas, especially in the context of what we're dealing with right now. I feel like talking about, hi, Rabbit of Tea, happy National Iced Tea Day. I hope you're enjoying a refreshing cup of iced tea, just like me. So American. Iced tea is the most American thing, and so appropriate that I'm reading the Constitution of the United States today to go along with it. So let's begin. And as always, please leave your questions or leave your comments. I will read them. I'm looking at everybody's comments now, and I will address them as I'm reading. I do want this to be a discussion. Of course, this is a study group, so just like any other study group, this is a co-education experience for all of us. So on the last sessions, I had gone over all of the articles that outlay the 3 different branches of the government, and had already gone through the Bill of Rights, which was the first 10 amendments, as well as the amendments that address race last week. So that was the 14th, 15th, and 16th, or 13th, 14th, 15th? Yeah, 13th, 14th, 15th. And so now I'm just going to kind of fill in the gaps with all the rest of them. So starting with amendment number 11. The judicial power of the United States shall not be construed to extend to any suit in law or equity commenced or persecuted against one of the United States by citizens of another state or by citizens or subjects of a foreign state. Okay. Amendment 12. The electors shall meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for president and vice president, one of whom at least shall not be an inhabitant of the same state with themselves. They shall name in their ballots the person voted for as president, and in distinct ballots the person voted for as vice president. And they shall make distinct list of all persons voted for as president, and of all persons voted for as vice president, and of the number of votes for each, which list they shall sign and certify, and transmit sealed to the seat of the government of the United States, directed to the President of the Senate. President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the votes shall then be counted. I wonder if that's how it's still done now. I mean, I'm sure there's some mechanization there, but the person having the greatest number of votes for president shall be the president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have such majority, then from the persons having the highest numbers not exceeding 3 on the list of those voted for as president, the House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the president. But in choosing the president, the votes shall be taken by states, the representation from each state having 1 vote. A quorum for this purpose shall consist of a member or members from 2/3 of the states, and a majority of all the states shall be necessary to a choice. And if the House of Representatives shall not choose a president whenever the right of choice shall be devolved upon them before the 4th day of March next following, then the vice president shall act as president, as in the case of the death or other constitutionally disability of the president. I like that, constitutional disability of the president. Just love the language that's used here. I'm gonna copy that one to remember. Should be a meme. The person having the greatest number of votes as vice president shall be the vice president, if such number be a majority of the whole number of electors appointed, and if no person have a majority, then from the 2 highest numbers on the list, the Senate shall choose the vice president. A quorum for the purpose shall consist of 2/3 of the whole number of senators, and a majority of the whole number shall be necessary to a choice. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. It's a long-winded one, but that was it. Actually, a lot of these that I'm going to be reading off are in regards to president, vice president, voting and all of that, which is actually very appropriate for us to be reviewing right now as we are in the midst of a very important election. Which, by the way, if your voter day, your primary voting day has not occurred yet in your state, I do highly recommend that you engage with that and, do your best. I know the president's seat is not something that we're voting on right now in these primaries, but even all of the other public offices that are up are, very good. I just love this. Look how beautiful that is. I mean, look how it changes. The color changes when it's just the tea. I mean, there is some melted ice in here, but it's just looks so beautiful. Wouldn't you want a glass of this? So good. Amendment 13, which we already went through, that was the abolition of slavery, a very important one. 14 was also a very important one about the rights of a citizen and who is a citizen. Amendment 15, also about race and voting, the right to vote. Amendment 16, the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived, without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. So they get to tax us the way they want to tax us. Amendment 17. The Senate of the United States shall be composed of 2 senators from each state, elected by the people thereof for 6 years, and each senator shall have 1 vote. The electors in each state shall have the qualifications requisite for electors of the most numerous branch of the state legislatures. When vacancies happen in the representation of any state in the Senate, the executive authority of such state shall issue writs of election to fill such vacancies, provided that the legislature of any state may empower the executive thereof to make temporary appointments upon the people until the people fill the vacancies by election as the legislature may direct. This amendment shall not be construed as to affect the election or term of any senator chosen before it becomes valid as part of the Constitution. Amendment 18, Section 1. After 1 year from the ratification of this article, the manufacture, sale, or transportation of intoxicating liquors within, the importation thereof into, or the exportation thereof from the United States and all territories subject to the jurisdiction thereof for beverage purposes is hereby prohibited. I don't mean to laugh, but I just think it's so funny that, all the other amendments are addressing very serious things. And we have, 2 of these amendments dedicated to a point in history that was a little uncertain. It was like, do we not like alcohol? Do we like alcohol? It makes me want to research more about the context in history at that time. I mean, when we studied these things in high school, I'm sure we read it and we researched it and we did all of that, but I guess I wasn't paying attention, or my mind was in a different space back then because, or of course, I'm an adult now and it's relevant to me because I drink alcohol myself now. So to see something that I enjoy and see as a constitutional right to enjoy was at one point abolished. Section 2. The Congress and the several states shall have concurrent power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Section 3. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of several states, as provided in the Constitution, within 7 years of the date of submission hereof to the states of the Congress. Oh, that's interesting. So there was a time limit on it. I don't remember that. There was a 7-year time limit on the abolition. Interesting. I'm gonna pick some dates right now. 1919 is whenever this was passed, the 18th Amendment that outlawed alcohol. And is it the 21st Amendment? 3 amendments later, in 1933. So yeah, that was their 25 years. Interesting. So did it become inoperable? I'm gonna have to research that more. Maybe if we have time at the end of this, I can look at that. Okay, Article 19. Okay, so yeah, this tea is so good. I can't, stop thinking about it. I know I'm like trying to focus on this, but it is so good. Not only refreshing and flavorful and unique in flavor, it almost tastes like root beer, It's just making me feel good inside, my whole body feeling good. Amendment 19. The right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Good one. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So now everybody can vote. That's great. Finally. What year was that? I'm so bad at not memorizing all of these. 1920. Okay, so that was right after. Amendment 20. Section 1. The terms of the President and Vice President shall end at noon on the 20th day of January, and the terms of Senators and Representatives at noon on the 3rd day of January, of the years in which such terms shall have ended, if this article has not been ratified, and the terms of their successors shall then begin. Section 2. The Congress shall assemble at least once in every year, and such meeting shall begin at noon on the 3rd day of January, unless they shall be law appointed a different day. Section 3. If at the time fixed for the beginning of the term of the President-elect shall have died, the Vice President-elect shall become President. If a President shall not have been chosen before the time fixed for the beginning of his term, or if the President-elect shall have failed to qualify, then the Vice President-elect shall act as President until the President shall have qualified, and the Congress may by law provide for the case wherein neither a President-elect nor a Vice President-elect shall have qualified, declaring who shall then act as President, or the manner in which one who is to act shall be selected, and such person shall act accordingly until a President or Vice President shall have qualified. Very confusing. Section 4. The Congress may, by law, provide for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the House of Representatives may choose a president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them, and for the case of the death of any of the persons from whom the Senate may choose a vice president whenever the right of choice shall have devolved upon them. Hi, Jake. Happy iced tea day. Enjoying some Ruby 18 iced. Section 5. Section 1 and 2 shall take effect on the 15th day of October following the ratification of this article. Section 6. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission. Okay, so now I get that. I get this 7 years from the date of submission. Like on the 18th Amendment with the abolishment of alcohol. So it kind of doesn't mean anything, just like an extra term. Amendment 21, Section 1. The 18th Article of Amendment to the Constitution of the United States is hereby repealed. Yay, we can drink alcohol again. Section 2. The transportation or importation into any state, territory, or possession of the United States for delivery or use therein of intoxicating liquors in violation of the laws thereof is hereby prohibited. Section 3. This article shall be inoperative unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by conventions in the several states as provided in the Constitution within 7 years from the date of the submission hereby to the states of the Congress. So this is saying that it has to be ratified by conventions. I'm still confused by this. I'm gonna have to research this and maybe give some details later on about what this means, that the article shall become inoperative unless it has been ratified. But so I guess because this is the one that it repealed. Why the wording is different on this one than because none of these have been ratified through conventions. So does this mean that this article is inoperative? I don't know. I'll have to research that more. Amendment 22, Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the President more than twice, and no person who has held the office of President or acted as President for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected President shall be elected to the office of the President more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of President when this article was proposed by the Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of President or acting as President during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of President or acting as President during the remainder of such term. Section 2. This article shall be inoperable unless it shall have been ratified as an amendment to the Constitution by the legislatures of 3/4 of the several states within 7 years from the date of its submission to the states of the Congress, to the states by the Congress. Amendment 23, Section 1. The district constituting the seat of the government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of President and Vice President equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the states, but they shall be considered for the purposes of the election of President and Vice President to be electors appointed by a state, and they shall meet in the district and perform such duties as provided by the 12th Article of Amendment. And the 12th Amendment was that big one. That was a little, confusing. But yeah, a lot of these are about, elections of the president. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 24, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States to vote in any primary or other election for President or Vice President, for electors for President or Vice President, or for Senator or Representative in Congress shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state by reason of failure to pay any poll tax or other tax. This is exactly what we're dealing with right now with the primary elections going on, and the fact, that the pandemic has made it very difficult for these elections to happen as they usually would happen, could challenge this right that we have to vote in those primaries. So there could be some legal consequences to any state or county that was, responsible for inhibiting someone from voting, especially if it's due to tax, a failure to pay any tax. In this case, there is a lot of technical challenges in doing the mail-in ballots, because I know here in Nevada we did mail-in ballots, which was easy. It's easy enough um, to fill in your ballot and put it into the mail, and it feels secure enough. I didn't have any issues with that, but something that I did see issues with, several people posted onto Facebook that they never received a ballot. And so that's the issue here, is that they weren't even, the option to vote wasn't even accessible to them. So interesting challenges that we're facing right now. I mean, really calls for the opportunity of a complete rehaul of our voting system, of even how our political systems work, how our governmental systems work. It really is an opportunity for that. And last week, when I was talking about the amendments and how amendments are created, and we haven't had an amendment created since 1992, and there is a lot of talk about needing to amend the Constitution to consider, the police brutality issues, as well as several other issues that people have become quite passionate about lately. And I had recommended silly, naive way, that there's two ways for amendments to get passed. One of them is through votes, and the other one is through a convention, a constitutional convention. And not a single amendment that is written here that I've read has ever been introduced or passed through a convention. They've all been going through the channel of voting within the Senate and the Congress. So I naively thought, oh wow, we're needing a whole rehaul. We're needing a whole, new system of communication and context for us to work within. Wouldn't it be cool to do that through a convention? Make some history here. And we're making all kinds of other history right now. Like, let's just keep going for it. And I had asked my friend, who is has advanced degrees in political science, and asked her what her her opinion on that naive idea was, and she basically said it would be a shit show, and that we wouldn't actually get anywhere. And I don't know. I mean, maybe, of course. I mean, as long as our current administrations are involved, yeah, it will be a shit show. But it's already a big shit show already. So, I still think it's a naive idea, but it's also kind of a cool idea. I don't know how anything like that would be organized, since we've never done it in history. But could be a cool forum to talk about all of these big systemic changes that everybody keeps asking us to address. And yes, Big Queen? Yes? You want to come say hi to everybody? Here, come. All right, so we are back at Amendment 24, Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Amendment 25, Section 1. In case of the removal of the President from office or of his death or resignation, the Vice President shall become President. Section 2. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the Vice President, the President shall nominate a Vice President who shall take office upon confirmation by a majority vote of both houses in Congress. By both houses of Congress, excuse me. Section 3. Whenever the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that he is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, and until he transmits to them a written declaration to the contrary, such powers and duties shall be discharged by the Vice President as acting President. Section 4. Whenever the Vice President and a majority of either the principal officers of the executive departments or of such other body as Congress may by law provide, transmit to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. The Vice President shall immediately assume the powers and duties of the office as acting President. Thereafter, when the President transmits to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives his written declaration that no inability exists, he shall resume the powers and duties of his office unless the Vice President and the majority of either the principal officers of the executive department or of such other bodies as Congress may by law provide transmit within 4 days to the President pro tempore of the Senate and the Speaker of the House of Representatives their written declaration that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office. Thereupon, Congress shall decide the issue, assembling within 48 hours for the purpose, if not in session. That would be a shit show if that was to happen. But I guess, they wrote these rules out, so just in case it does happen, we know what to do. If the Congress within 21 days after receipt of the latter written declaration, or if Congress is not in session within 21 days after Congress is required to assemble, determines by 2/3 vote of both houses that the President is unable to discharge the powers and duties of his office, the Vice President shall continue to discharge the same as acting President. Otherwise, the President shall resume the powers and duties of his office. There are a lot of checks and balances for our president. But it's all, it's all rigged, right? So there's all these different layers, how you can impeach in the politics of both, houses of Congress. And then here even, the vice president and the executive team can make the statement that the president is unfit for duty. But how is that going to happen? That would be a very extreme case for the president's own team to make that call and to make that statement. Amendment 26, Section 1. The right of citizens of the United States who are 18 years or older to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of age. Section 2. The Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. And finally, Amendment 27. No law varying the compensation for the services of the senators and representatives shall take effect until an election of representatives shall have intervened. So yeah, that's it. And that last one is from 1992. So we're almost at 30 years since an amendment. And maybe just about time that, we look at these things and, now that we've read through the entire thing, definitely can say that the language is interesting. If you've been following along with me as I'm reading, awesome for you. A lot of parts I did have to reread over to make sure I was understanding correctly, but it's still a pretty timeless document. And so, yeah, there's a lot of validity for referencing the Constitution, in modern issues that we're dealing with, such as the response to the pandemic, and now with the call for equality. The call for equality itself is extremely constitutional. Extremely constitutional. If anything, the Constitution should be fighting for them the way it's written here. Of course, our society works in a very different way. Oh, I still can't get over how good this is. It's coated my stomach with this nice coolness. It's mentholy coolness. And so really a lot of the energy and the texture from the iced tea has kind of settled into the core of my body, which is fine. I'm feeling it everywhere else. Like my head is feeling nice. I'm feeling focused and energized from it. But just like this very peaceful, settling coolness in the core of my body, which is good because I ate not a huge meal, but I ate before coming here. So there's always that worry, that you're going to feel that like drop in energy or lag of energy after eating a meal. But the tea has definitely helped. I tell you what, if any restaurant was serving this iced tea, I'd order it every time. It's so good. A lot of times with iced tea, especially in restaurant settings, so restaurants tend to be a place where a lot of iced tea is made and sold. Restaurants and restaurant managers, restaurant owners are always so price sensitive and conscious of the price that they're always looking for like the lower price. And so that leads to lower quality tea. This 18 Ruby Black Tea is definitely... Hi, Golden Fog. Hey, guys. Good to see you. Happy National Iced Tea Day. You missed it. I used these glasses to kind of shake up the tea and the ice to cool it. I hot brewed this black tea. But, yeah, Golden Fog is on Instagram Live now. Awesome new coffee shop opening in downtown Las Vegas. And we were doing a tasting talking about this exact thing, about how to handle iced tea, because it's the desert here, it's hot, we need iced tea. And iced tea is definitely a place where a restaurant or a cafe or a coffee shop can totally differentiate themselves from everybody else in the neighborhood, because they can use higher quality product. And they can also use some like artisanal showmanship in how they present their iced tea, instead of just batch brewing like the big, commercial machines of iced tea, to have ready to tap out throughout the day of service. Making the iced tea like how I made it here earlier. I hot brewed it in here, decanted it, put it into the glass with water to chill it down, and then poured it into another icy glass. It took me less than 5 minutes to do that. It took me about the same amount of time it would take to make a cocktail. And so a restaurant could really elevate that experience of iced tea and differentiate what everybody else in the neighborhood is providing by using high quality tea. Makes it taste a whole lot different. I mean, this is definitely like the best cup of iced tea I've ever had. But then it can also just create a really cool experience for the customer. A lot of times people just think of iced tea as this soft drink, just drink it and, just quench the thirst, and that's it. Not really, thinking of iced tea as having the potential of being like a cocktail or a mocktail or anything like that. So. So yeah, there's hasn't been any questions today. The good news is I finished reading the Constitution, so I don't need to read it again. We can always reference back to past live sessions if we do need to look at things. But I am gonna field interest in the response to doing this study group and seeing how to continue it. And I've been doing these weekly sessions in a public forum. I'm thinking that perhaps doing it in a more intimate, private forum may be more prone for engagement of people feeling confidence to be vulnerable and to speak up. There's a lot of vulnerability in this activity. I mean, just to sit and read this language, I feel very vulnerable doing that, but I've also made a commitment that I would do it, and so, that's why I feel like this is important work to do right now, to act as that vulnerable point, and encourage others, to follow and to be confident and doing what they feel right. Additionally, and this is something else, to think about, kind of an insecurity that's come out since I started doing these sessions is kind of this like shame of ignorance. That, oh, you don't know the Constitution? Didn't you study that in high school? Is like, yeah, but I don't know. I don't remember all of that. Like, there's certain points to it I remember. I remember three branches. Um, and then even after reading it now, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of stuff that I don't retain and remember. And so that's why it should be like an ongoing process. And the fear of ignorance, I think, is what holds a lot of people back. It definitely could have held me back if I would have surrendered to that vulnerability of feeling like, oh, I'm vulnerable. Like, people are going to see me reading the Constitution and think that I'm stupid, think that I'm ignorant for not knowing these things. And I think that could be a very dangerous thing. Even in reference to what we're dealing with in all of the communication and conversations happening today around racism, I think that is one big block that people have with entering into these conversations and remaining engaged in these conversations is the insecurity of being ignorant. Because that's essentially what everybody's saying. It's like, we're all trying to say, like, oh, you're not evil, you're just ignorant. And there's such a stigma around the word ignorant. There is a very big difference between the word ignorance and stupidity. But I think people forget about that difference when they hear the word ignorant. Being ignorant just means that you don't know something yet. You don't know you're racist yet. And that racism is not in this like evil pit in your heart. It's in our entire system. And as long as we remain ignorant to addressing that and working on changing that, it'll never change. So, I often am told that I'm a very diplomatic type person. Even though I have very strong opinions, I think that it is far more effective in creating empathy before creating shame. And so that's why I'm always really fast to defend the other side. Not defend their ignorance, but just to defend their perspective, and potential insecurities and potential motivations that may be there. So this is what I have to offer. My vulnerability is what I have to offer to the world. It's all I have. I'm definitely willing to be the first person to jump on the dance floor and get the party started. And so that's what I'm going to continue doing. That's what I feel like in my heart is right, and what I should be doing. So thank you for allowing me to use this platform to share my vulnerability. And my only ask in return is that maybe not necessarily with me directly through this platform, but what I ask for in return is that you pass that vulnerability on through yourself, through your own relationships, through your own connections. You may not feel as comfortable being on such a public platform like this to share those vulnerabilities, but I would hope that you'd feel comfortable doing that with your own family and close friends, because that'll be a very powerful act for all of us to do, to share our vulnerabilities, to share our insecurities. Even if those insecurities seem silly, it's like, I'm American and I don't know the U.S. Constitution. Nothing wrong with that. Let's study it. Let's discuss it. Let's talk about it. So with that, I think I'm going to sign out soon. It's been a nice Wednesday with all of you. Beautiful iced tea day here on June 10th. I will be with the Tea Talk groups tomorrow. And yeah, just look forward to another beautiful day and beautiful cup of tea. And so with that, Bitcoin, we say goodbye. Such a cute